Come on, be my baby tonight. Come on, be my baby tonight. I've seen the way you've been with other thugs before me. Come on, be my baby tonight. See how you are. That damn David. Fendi like the bag. This is the I Refuse podcast. Anyway, this is Mr. Fox, the I Refuse podcast. I know it's been a while. I'm kind of spacing on my videos because, I want to give y'all some meaty content moving forward. I I did a previous video probably a couple of months ago about the Homecoming real world series. They did one at the time on New York, which was the first one I believe that Tammy Roman was on. I didn't watch the whole thing, but from what I saw, it was like she's really up to her old. That kind of situation between her and David divided a lot of people, and unfortunately, it's a very good example of a case study on how we can, while we exalt another person, we just kind of put down the other person in a situation. And it's like, they both give and take. They both got pros and cons. But in that video, I also had mentioned real world in general and what it meant to me as a bi man when I saw. I didn't remember Pedro a whole lot. I was probably like 8 or 9, but I do remember in 2000. Like I said in that previous video, homecoming video, about the New Orleans cast, and what stuck out for me from that show was the gay guy on that show that was dating in a serious relationship with a guy that was in the military who was also gay, and how he would gush over him, but more importantly, how the show and his relationship tried to navigate as best they could with life dating a service member that wasn't out. How the boyfriend would always come into town and they would blur out his face while he was still in the service. And I had also mentioned in that episode on this podcast, on this YouTube channel, how that was around the time the Don't Ask, Don't Tell was still in place. And not only that, the very damaging effects of that act on service members who, even if they were speculated or rumored to be gay, were viciously attacked. I mentioned Barry Winchell as a prime example. And I remember not too long after that season had ended, they would revisit the cast like in a Where Are They Now kind of thing. And at that point, the two were still dating, and they had both of them on this special, and the guy's face wasn't blurred out. And I was like, oh, that's so amazing. And he went into great detail as to why it was very important that they maintain the integrity of their relationship without sacrificing or their livelihood, but also their identity for safety and health reasons, because it was very tumultuous during that time. But I forgot for whatever reason that season of New Orleans Real World was also the season that they had David and Julie. It was David, Julie. It was the guy with the spiky blonde hair. They always got to throw one of them in there. And as well as the guy that was on there dating the service member. Like, it's crazy to me because although, the situation with the gay roommate and the service member who were in a serious relationship, that stuck out to me on a different level, but I completely forgot I completely forgot that David and his roommates being irritated by him all the time, especially the tiny native girl. I forget her name, but she was tiny. She was feisty. She had like a hair trigger temper, and she had short black hair. I just remember, for the most part, they would always get into it at work. They worked at a television channel. A stipulation of being part of the cast and being in the house is that you also had to work. And I remember there was always workplace friction between David, primarily between David and the girl with the short black hair who was feisty. It's hilarious to me, and I have a juvenile sense of humor where it's like you have this tiny woman just popping off at the meeting table at David, or well, her primary target was David, and it was just a creative difference, and it was that was a constant. If it was not David and this girl, it was either David and the blonde haired girl. I think her name was Julie or Ann or something, who was tasked often to be the producer of the show. Like everybody had a segment they were responsible for, and I guess it was her job and the guy's job. I think his name was Danny. Really cute white guy named Danny, who I guess was like a co-producer or a director or something. They would have the round table in the meeting, and she'd be like, "Well, this is our next project." And it would be something as simple as you each get a segment where you tip off the segment with introducing yourselves. And she just wanted something simple, like, "Hi, my name is David. This is where I'm from. This is my age. This is what I bring to the table," something like that. But of course, of course, David had to always work in that song or that rap, or it was like some kind of mic, kind of open mic thing. "Come on, be my baby tonight." Now, when I tell you, I have never in the history of my life seen something that's not a studio recording or a piece of movie or a clip or a scene have such a long shelf life than David's "Come On Be My Baby Tonight." Now, this was in the year 2000 that, this season of New Orleans came on. Now, they'd done New Orleans, I think, one other time, but it was the year 2000, and, the show was on probably all of about 6 months. And I've heard that song or rap and David being tied to that for like 2 or 3 years because it was on that show, and clips of him doing the song at like open mics, poetry slams, at the job, in the house. Like it's not even an actual full song. It's like, "Come on, be my baby tonight. I have seen the way you've been with other thugs before me. Come on, be my baby tonight." Loop it like, and the looks on his roommates' faces as he's performing it, and they couldn't take David. Like I like David. David, in the history of like people of color castmates on the entire run of Real World, he stands out for me. Cyrus from the Boston run stands out to me. And there was a black girl part of that same cycle. Shit, I see her face. Oh man, she was also in Boston, but those three typically stand out for me. Steven from Seattle was okay. The white girl from that show that ended up getting Lyme disease gave him grief later before she went out to the car and he slapped her. Um, he kind of stands out for me, but for me, it's Cyrus and David and the other the black girl from Boston. It's gonna come to me later. Stand out for me. So back to my example. Julia or Anne or whatever her name was, just wanted David to do a simple introduction, but he decides to use his recording time, his clip, to do the "Come On Be My Baby Tonight." And when I tell you, and production is shady as hell. Production will always be shady on any show, but like to to do the contrast, the clip of him performing the song and her playing it back, and like the rest, like the majority of the episode, she is fuming. And one thing I realized with non people of color that are fuming, their tone tends to get out of line a little bit. Um, I guess she was expecting going into the situation that David was just gonna, bow down and just do it her way. But it's like at this point in the season, you know what you're getting, and you're talking about two creatives. And one thing about a creative such as myself, very rarely do we compromise, and we don't really see what the big deal is. If you want identity, individuality, and self expression, and you get that and you don't respect it, and there is no respect because your tone's out of line, you're going to get some pushback. Like, it wasn't that deep. It really wasn't. It was a small town channel. Like, if it was NBC, CBS, uh, CNN, or something, maybe. But a lot of people that watch that little clip are not going to remember that. But I get it. Like, you got to dramatize it, you got to make it a bigger deal than what it is. And they stayed on David's neck the whole entire season. And they hated it. Now, never mind that, the image of a muscular black man, the stereotype and the prejudice that come with that. David wasn't an aggressive guy, but of course, people on the outside looking at the show are like, when they're in close quarters in that hallway at the news station, him and Julie and I think his name was Chris or Scott or something, are in the hallway, and she's just like drilling it hard. Like, no, we gotta do this way. Gotta do this way. I don't want it. I don't like it. These were the instructions. Blah 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 blah. And David's not, bending or compromising. Mind you, They stay on David's neck about how he expresses himself, and when people don't get their way, they essentially take the dodgeball and walk off. And this Julie and Sarah playing tall looking bitch walked off and, went to commercial. But, they just can't take him. Between her and that girl with the black hair, just can't take him. And it's like, he's not slamming tables, he's not flipping tables over. He's just firm in what he believes and who he knows he is. And some people can't take that. Like, there are people in this world. This is my takeaway. There are people in this world that just, it's all about control. And it's more so these that are about control and power. It's not about constructive criticism because they haven't constructed anything. But they just love to control people and things. Never mind, like, in their life, there is no control. It's probably somebody in their life that's doing the same to them, and they're lashing out to everybody else on the outside. New Orleans, that particular cast was interesting. I know, Real World as a whole has to counterbalance something nice and something sweet with something that's probably about this small but has to take up the rest of the time each episode. I kind of saw something like that with there was the New York season with Eric Nees and Heather B. Um, that was like the fun side, but then there was like some dark stuff, some vulnerable stuff from that season. I believe involving like date rape and crime and stuff like that. And trust and believe, like my image of New York thus far, outside of visiting New York and getting a different experience, is courtesy of HBO and Real World. When I tell y'all, like American Undercover, Taxi Cab Confessions, Pimps Up, Hoes Down, Hookers at Brewers Point, all like most of that shit came out of New York. Needless to say, I was kind of disappointed that I got to New York and never made it to Brewers Point. I wonder if that shit's still alive. But nevertheless, I digress. There's rumor that there will be the next season of Real World Homecoming will be New Orleans. And I'm going to have to check that out. Like, I really wasn't all the way invested with, Real World Homecoming New York City because I've seen enough of Tammy. The 10 or 15 seasons or so of Basketball Wives, I'm good on that. And Tammy again, really, there really is no difference. There isn't a whole lot of nuance. Or bringing up or revisiting something back of the 90s. And the facts are still what they are. Like, production aside, one minute you're laughing at the hijinks and the rough housing when you're in the blanket. You go in the bathroom, old girl with the white blonde hair, you guys are talking and you come back out and you're mad. Like, and then that is the standout of that season of Real World New York. And they revisited it again at Homecoming. And I'm like, now Tammy's on one. And David's indifferent about it. And then you want to bring your husband. Uh, I'm like, is this Basketball Wives again? It's like, there's so much growth you claim to have had. And then you dial back and you're back to being, in my eyes, a bully. And just fucking up the whole vibe. Because the man doesn't want to fall for your shit. It'll be interesting to see with New Orleans Real World Homecoming what exactly that's going to look like. I don't have a date. I haven't seen a trailer, but there's talk about it. I'll be real interested to see the one if they do one for Boston. What Cyrus is up to, what Sean is up to. I still can't think of that girl's name. I think it begins with an S, and it's a really cute, interesting name. I remember from the Boston season, Sean was the guy that wore the glasses, had the dark hair, and wore the flannel a lot. His profession was he was a lumberjack or he chopped down trees or some shit. Cyrus was the bald-headed black guy, Darius Rucker looking dude, kind of pretty mellow. Um, I see some similarities between him and David, but Cyrus was more laid back. Um, and then it was the black girl that she was more like middle ground. She wasn't too urban, and she was more like in the middle. But she didn't take shit. But she was articulate, very articulate, um, cool. But like once you get on her bad side, then that's what the episode's about. And they lived in a firehouse, which I thought was so cool. Um, it was an old firehouse up in Boston that they converted, and I think that was one of the two times that Real World had converted a firehouse of some kind. I think they did it again in New York or Chicago or somewhere in California. But that was interesting. I liked that season. There really wasn't a whole lot of drama outside of Cyrus and the one black girl kind of butting heads from time to time, and you know. So I had to go in here and talk about New Orleans Real World that season, since there's rumor or speculation that that will be the new season of Homecoming. That's on Peacock or Disney Plus or something. Bonus content in this episode, theories, giving ideas out to to the universe. I would like for whoever is behind the Real World Homecoming series or the resurgence or reboot or whatever you want to call it to do something about making the band Homecoming. Particularly focused on season one and season two. Don't really give a shit about the Danity Kane, Donnie Clang, Day 26, the day after, whatever you want to call it. Not so much. If I can get Lorianne to come back with her boom boom clap and control him Willie, get Brian, and her clapping back a ditty like every other week, I'll be good. Um, you know, they could even put in a Where Are They Now segment. Lately I've been seeing on the timeline on Twitter, clips of when they would reject people. And I remember clear as day when they had rejected the one girl with the braids. She had all the promise and the potential to be like on the label. Like she would dust them in the battles. She had the presence, she had the raps, she had it all, right? And I remember her vividly because there was a point in the season where the singers and those musical acts had to dance, and she was just glad that she didn't have to because she was a rapper. But at some point during the season, she had made it into the house at this point, and she was doing really well. But she had got word or a phone call that her sister had been murdered, and not only that, she was murdered, dismembered, and like scattered all over the place. In production, it captured the news live. The phone call when they in the little room, and she takes the phone call, and then she just started spazzing out and withdrawing and crying a whole lot. It got to a point to where she was considering like going home and never coming back. But she saw the season through, only to end up not making the cut on the label. Which at that time, we didn't. There was some rumors and some speculation as to Bad Boy at that point, and we're talking like the the early 2000s. Um, this is before Day 26 and Danity Kane and all this fire and brimstone about contracts and how they do their acts and stuff. Um, she he had Diddy and Harvey Pierre had the people at the restaurant to make their selections, and it's always a production. Like he has a room full of people to pick, to watch him pick or drop people or not take people on, and they're in the back, and he makes his picks, and he does the whole production. welcome to Bad Boy. Welcome to Bad Boy. And people are drinking, toasting, eating, and stuff. And she's spazzing out in the front end of the restaurant, as she should at that time. And I was like, yeah, she really should just flip this whole bitch over. Um, like, she's simmering and she's, exploding at the table, smashing the glass, going to the bathroom, yelling. She's realizing that even through her sister being murdered and her processing her grief and still saying to the competition and believing that she was this close. And she had everything going for her. Like, she wasn't cookie cutter. She had the grimy rhymes and the lyrics. She can flow. She had stage presence. And she was dusting them every week, every episode, right? So for y'all to string her along this far, and she's conscious and aware of the impact she has on you guys, which is positive. At every audition, you can see it in her eyes that this is not some gimmick to her. This is really what it is. For y'all to get her all the way to the restaurant, go through the whole entire production of the selection process, and y'all pick all these other people who never saw the light of day to this day with an album or a single or anything, I would spaz out too. And, one of the dudes from the label or one of the people from the production goes to the bathroom to try to calm her down. Now, mind you, this isn't like a multiple stall, multiple urinal bathroom. This is like a one person at a time kind of bathroom. And it's at the end of the hall. Needless to say, very small personal space. And you hear her screaming and wailing out. And it's not quiet. Like, they hear it in the back. Like, Puffy's like, somebody spazzing out up there. Like, nigga, you know what you did. You know who it is. He's like, y'all go take care of that. Y'all go look into that. And it's like there's no calming her down. Like, she went through all that, and she has nothing left but to confront or be remembered of her own grief of her sister dying and her not being there. Her sister being murdered, being, dismembered. And that's all she has out of this whole experience. Like, it was, I think, 8 weeks or 12 weeks, jumping hurdles, going through hoops, showing herself to be very serious. And she could have really been something crazy had Diddy, like, rewarded her with a contract for clearly going well above and beyond, showing her talent, and that she had the range and the shelf life to, like, have a real career. And y'all just pick, like, these other people. It's so weird, and I remember because it was like nobody else really stood out that season. And considering he went on to make 2 other seasons, and even though he had signed some acts from those later 2 seasons, the most we got out of them was probably 1 album. 2 if they're lucky. 2 if they're lucky. But that second era of Bad Boy doesn't even compare to that first era of, from 92 to 2002, 2005. And you see that in the fact that when they did like a 25 anniversary segment at the BET Awards back in 2016, I believe, the only acts he had up there, with the exception of French Montana, which there's like a good 10 or 15 year gap, he had his acts from those first 5 or 6 years. Didn't have Danity Kane, didn't have Day 26 to kind of mix it up. Even though the label's been around 25, 30 years, your show was essentially was consistent of the acts consisted of the acts from those first 4 or 5 years. You didn't even have Total up there, but that's another story. Um, but yeah, like it would be pretty dope if they did like making the band Homecoming, have Farnsworth, have Bad Boys the band come back. Um, dust people off, clean them up a little bit, get them back. Maybe have some Danity Kane back. Um, Gotta have Lorianne Gibson back because she's still out here clearing people. Um, I saw her on Dance Moms clearing the white moms in the back, having being in black people business, trying to tell having issue with a professional dance instructor, artist, creative is teaching the kids to prepping them in an area that could possibly elevate them and expanding their palettes. They were like, oh, it's just too sexy. Oh, I don't know if they should be doing the splits and the leg openings and all this other stuff. Ma'am, expose your life to some Alvin Ailey and some Catherine Dunham before we come at Lorianne Gibson. And she cleared them as she was looking through the racks of clothes, and that shit was hilarious. Um, Cause trust and believe, like Lorianne Gibson, Carrie Ann Inaba, Rosie Perez, Jennifer Lopez, um, like an extension of an age-old art form, but putting some contemporary flourishes in it while also keeping the same respect, consideration for the modern and the iconic and I guess traditional ways of dance. It's not easy. But of course, you have people in these smaller towns and smaller sections of the country that just are used to a particular way, which there's nothing bad or, there's nothing negative I'll take away from that, but it's like there are other forms and, there are other cultures that bring something to the table as well. And I'm so glad she cleared the white moms that were just having issues with just the little snippets. And it's just like, Lorianne said, when I was in the presence of Debbie Allen, the Debbie Allen, I couldn't speak. When I saw Michael Jackson, when I saw Prince, I didn't even know what my life was. Like, come on. But, they'll try it. The whites will try it. The whites will try being all up in your business, not having any idea what's going on, and in exchange, trying to disrespect you on the sly. But you catch their asses. So that'll be interesting. I nominate, a future homecoming, since we're revisiting MTV reality shows, doing the Making the Band Homecoming. I mean, granted, it might turn into Big Brother where they're like arguing and putting each other in. Well, Big Brother didn't do this. Put each other in like chokeholds, and Babs is on the stairwell talking about let them fight, and did he come in every episode talking about I'm shutting down the studio, or Dylon's PO calls. And nobody answers the phone, or somebody calls for Babs to do her hair and nobody takes the message to let her know, and her face is tight because she got to sit there with her hair not done. Sarah's husband comes in trying to tell her and the group how it should sound, arguing with Doe Fat. Babs getting into it with Tony and about her smoking. And Tony is like, it shouldn't be around Sarah because her voice. So what you saying? She make our records hot. If it wasn't for her, our records won't be hot. Stuff like that. Like I need those kind of hijinks. I need that kind of energy in my life, all the way down to the Palisades house where they be staying, where everything's white, the walls are white, the furniture and the rugs are white. and y'all knocking shit over, bringing that New York subway energy. I need this. I need this. I need this. So yeah, that's where I'm at. If this real world homecoming from New Orleans is actually gonna happen, I'll be in there like swimwear, and I'll be back to comment on that. In the meantime, just pay your bills, fall back on doing the GoFundMe, stay hydrated, stay blessed, and stay out of grown folk business. And if you white, stay out of black people business. This is Mr. Fox I Refuse podcast. Be sure to follow and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and be sure to keep your eyes out on the streaming. You know, we're producing and brainstorming with the season finale of season 3. The streaming podcast will be, we'll take summer break. I got a couple of vacations coming up. I'll be gone for about 2 weeks. Late July, early August. I might do some stuff while I'm out. Cause you know, we gotta mix it up, do different locations, and make y'all believe we actually got a budget out this bitch. And yeah, we'll be back in the fall on the streaming. In the meantime, we'll keep the YouTube channel alive. We love our subscribers. We're up to about 18 right now. If I can get like 1,000, you ain't gotta really listen to the whole episode. But I know I give y'all enough content in these episodes for y'all to be like, damn, that should be funny. Yeah, follow, subscribe. This is Mr. Fox I Refuse podcast. Now we'll catch y'all later. Bye.